So our gospel again is John. And for me, what John is doing with Jesus is showing him as God's divine love in a life-giving way. I mean, we all want some life-giving in our lives, don't we? So this divine love of Jesus comes in a life-giving way to people. We saw that at the very beginning of his gospel. One of his first stories, of course, is Jesus going to the wedding at Cana, where they ran out of wine. Now, as much as that's a problem today, it was a huge thing back then because wine was a sign of God's blessing, God's favor on them. And so you're getting a wedding started at the beginning of a community, and there's no wine. It's a huge deal. So he turns a lot of water into a lot of wine, showing that, no, God's favor is for you. What a loving and life-giving thing to do for that community in this wedding. We see it again with this woman at the well in a few chapters. She is a Samaritan, someone he wasn't supposed to deal with. She was kind of an outcast, someone to be spurned, if anything. And yet he engages her in conversation. He wants to give her a drink of life-giving water. And as he talks to her, he keeps engaging her. All of a sudden she realizes, hold it, this is the divine one. This is the one, and he's talking to me. He's gracious and accepting of me. That was her divine, life-giving drink. To know that God was in front of her, and she could get this divine, life-giving drink. Well, we have more of it today. We have Jesus at the temple, and the religious leaders there wanting to tap and test him. And so they bring this woman who's been caught in the act of adultery. And they bring her before her, telling him that, of course, in the law of Moses, we can stone this woman. It's pretty heavy, isn't it? This is an execution right there before their eyes through the act of stoning. I mean, heavy. We can't even get our heads around how, incredibly grave this situation that he has presented to them is. But here's Jesus, and he's getting this. He's been quoted that the law is saying they could do this, and it does. You can find it in the law of Moses. It's there. The law is a funny thing. It has some great gifts to us in terms of showing us, hopefully helping us have order in community and having lives together that have some boundaries and all those good things. But the problem is that the law is also a temptation to those in power because they're wielding the law. And usually there's a whole lot of law, isn't there? There's laws covering all kinds of things. I mean, it's just staggering. You can't keep it all in your head. There's so much law. And what happens then, the people in power, is they can kind of cherry pick their way through it. And they can raise up those laws in the law that they can use against those they don't like, those they think are a challenge to their power, and they can do that. We've seen it time and again in governments throughout history. You use the laws that you want, and then, of course, over here, the laws you don't really want to have, much to do with because they're favoring you, or, so you just forget about those laws. You just, poo-poo those laws. So you're basically cherry-picking your law to advantage yourself, to have power over other people. And again, even in Christianity, that's been the case. Or Western Christianity, through the last few hundreds of years, we were really big on all the laws around sexuality when Jesus said very little about sexuality. And then we really didn't deal much with all the laws and things Jesus said about money and greed, and we poo-pooed that because, we like our money. It's that advantaging of ourselves that the law can help us do. And the reason I bring that up today is because I think it's going on in this story. All right, so let's see. The woman was caught in adultery. That means someone else was there. And these men happen to know that would have to be another man. And they don't drag the man out there, do they? They don't drag their favorite friend man out there. No, in the social structure that day, of course, the woman was a lot lower. They drag the lowly woman out for a big example here. Isn't that interesting? And they do it because they know this is going to bug Jesus. They got him figured out well enough to know that this is going to bug him a lot. And they're hoping with all this fire, the graveness of this situation, the holy cow, I mean, they're going to kill this woman right there, execution. This is a big deal. That they'll get him to react, that he'll fight fire with fire. And he'll say something which then they can accuse him, and heck with the woman, they don't really care that much about her anyway. That's what they're trying to do here. They're trying to trap him, it says. They want to trap this guy, get him in trouble. You know, it's interesting when, here's the wisdom of Jesus I was talking to the kids about. That it's really wise often to do the opposite of what people expect you to do. So they come in with fire and they're hoping you respond with fire. You do the very opposite. What does he do? He kneels down and doodles on the ground. This is calm distraction. Right? The very opposite of what they're expecting. So they wanted to stir everything up, and he's just calming it down. He's diffusing the crisis. He's taking the air out of the energy in the room. He's doodling on the ground. He's like he's disinterested in this whole thing. Well, this, of course, bugs them. And they keep hammering at him. They want the energy. They want him to do something, and so they keep at him, and finally he says something. He says, "Let you without sin cast the first stone." What an amazing comeback, huh? Because the first thing it notes, of course, is they are not without sin. Now, they think they're superior to this woman. They're not like her at all, that she's a worthless thing, and they're these important leaders of the Jewish nation, all that whole thing at that time. So they think they're really hot stuff, and she's nothing. But they can't say they're without sin, because the only one without sin is God. And to admit to that means they're like, God, now that's blasphemy. Now they do have a sin that's a problem. So he's really, the ones that came to trap him, Jesus has turned around and really basically trapped them. He's made them, if they would look a little deeper, see that they are like this woman, not unlike her. That they too have a problem with sin. You know, Paul in his many letters goes on to really kind of unpack this idea. In Romans, he said, all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. That God has this really high bar of how we should act and live in the world, and none of us clear that bar. We all have failings in our lives. We all have ways we just don't make it. And for these leaders, it was, I think, a lot of it was their pride, also some of their greed, For us, maybe it's our laziness or whatever, and those things, of course, those kinds of sins don't get public scrutiny. They don't raise the public ire very much when, almost acceptable sometimes to be greedy or some lazy or something. But the sin like adultery now, well, that's, we got to talk about that and, wrap our heads around that and get all excited, and so they wanted to separate those out. But before God, none of us are righteous unless God makes us righteous, because we all have this problem. So if there's not forgiveness for us, we all are falling short. And this is what Paul keeps talking about. We need the forgiveness, the grace of God to stand before God. To remember that. Because this world is full of people who want to pick up stones and throw them. Not literal stones most of the time. That's a rare thing. That's a pretty thankfully dramatically rare thing. But it does happen. The stones we often pick up are words. The old saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Words hurt. Awful. And Jesus picks up on that in his Sermon on the Mount. And he says, you've heard that it was said, you shall not kill or you shall not murder. But I tell you, someone who calls someone else a fool is guilty of murder, is in it too. So name calling puts us under this death, right? Jesus came to give life. Calling people names and hurling those kinds of stones is death-inducing, and Jesus came to give life. Of course, he's not going to do that. And I hope we too don't pick those stones up, because it's all around us in this culture, all this stone throwing, name calling, all this death-giving stuff going on. And Jesus came to be divine love that's life-giving. Well, these men are trapped. They know it. They're cornered in this whole thing. And one by one, it says they wander away. They can't throw the stone. And they haven't trapped Jesus. He's trapped them, and they walk away. And finally, it's just Jesus and this woman. And he tells her, hey, woman, is there anybody here to condemn you? And she said, no one, sir. And of course, Jesus says, neither do I. So the leaders have left, and their condemnation has been washed away, and neither does Jesus. This divine love honors her with forgiveness. She knows it. Well, I hope for you today you can get a little bit of that. The way I experience that often is the older I get in life, I have this kind of memory pocket in my brain of regrets. Anybody else got that? If you're young and you don't have the regret pile, trust me, you'll get there. You're human, you're going to get that regret stuff. But for us, it just piles up, and every once in a while it just hits me. You get that? You're just walking along and that regret goes, oh man, I did do that. I can't believe I said that. Or I didn't do that, and I didn't say that, and this regret piles up. And so we're here to be reminded. There is no one here to condemn you today. Nobody is condemning you today. Nobody. And neither does God. His divine love is for you in a life-giving way. So as you go out today, I hope you hear the words of Jesus, go and sin no more. You get a fresh start. You get a fresh start. Just go and don't do it. And I would hear you also, the last words we say here is go in peace and serve the Lord. Be like him. Don't pick up the stones. Don't go down that road. Be the life-giving love as you can for others in this world. Amen.